Good evening, and welcome to Hobbservation Point Live. I am your host, Chuck Hobbs, and I welcome everybody to what should be another interesting show. This past week has just been nothing short of amazing. At the start of the week, we had the revelation that President Donald Trump had finally had some of his taxes analyzed by the New York Times and other news organizations, and we realized that not only was he nearly $500 million in debt, but that in addition to the debt, that he wasn't quite the billionaire that he has claimed to be over the course of the last 5 years since he first rolled down the the escalator at the Trump Tower and announced that he was running for president. That's number one. Then we had the debacle that some people call a debate last Tuesday night, a very contentious affair, I believe, by CBS Evening News standards. They say that the president interrupted Joe Biden 73 times, and I don't think I got a count for how many times Joe Biden actually interrupted the president, but he did his share of interrupting too. And I don't think that anything positive came out of it. Definitely not for Donald Trump, but for the American people. I think we all had the crying Jordan meme look, so to speak, in regards to, is this how far we have fallen in regards to presidential politics? But the week wasn't over. As the week continued, we found out that the president's advisor, Hope Hicks, had the coronavirus. Within 24 hours of that, we found out that the president tested positive for the coronavirus, as did his wife, Melania. And there's been like dominoes falling ever since. Other staunch Republicans who were all in the Rose Garden well over a week ago when Amy Coney Barrett was announced as the replacement for Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, they're all sick and they continue to get sicker each and every day. So with that, I've brought along a few of my friends, some of my closest friends from my time at Morehouse College. I call it the SpelHouse Roundtable. So I'd like to welcome again Joy Stevens, Malaika Dowdell, Alana Mathews Mercurio, my man Teddy McDaniel, and I think I got everybody. Oh, and Ayinde Waring. I'm gonna have to pay for that later. How are y'all? Everybody okay?
Always good. Always good to be here.
Always, yeah. And I'm not gonna lie. We'll talk about this before we get out of here. But again, I'm in withdrawal. The Facebook Memory app showed me the other day how FAMU's homecoming was a year ago, and I was seeing all the pictures, and I was sitting there very sad as I was looking through. I realized in a couple of weeks we would have been at SpelHouse homecoming. There will be no SpelHouse homecoming, and those pictures too will make me sad. But at least this forum gives us an opportunity to interact with each other and as well as discuss some of the crucial issues that we're all facing here in America. So right off the top, I'd like to talk first about Trump and the Rona. Do you believe he really has it? Is this a hoax, or does he not have it? And is this just a play on sympathy with his base as well as other independent voters who might not have made a decision yet? Who wants to jump in first?
Well, I'll start.
Go ahead.
Yeah,
go ahead, Teddy.
I has it. I call this the COVID-19 cesspool. It is. It's all the doubling down deniers. They've been talking about it, downplaying it for I don't know how long, and all of a sudden, the weakness comes out. It's really a shame. You know, the American people, hundreds of thousands of people have died from this. We are in a public health crisis, and the leader of the free world decides that in very public settings, in these rallies, he's not going to wear a mask. He's going to act as if this doesn't exist and it's going to go away. Well, I mean, God don't like ugly, and I believe he has it, and I wish him the very best in his health. But I tell you, it's not just him; it's his staff, it's his advisors, it's senators like North Carolina's Tom Tillis, who have been in denial the whole time. But what comes around goes around. God help him.
Amen. Alana, you want to jump in on that topic?
Yeah, so you talked about the COVID cesspool. I want to call it the COVID craft country. And I believe Donald Trump has tried to take on the persona of Christina, and he really wants his presidency to be immortal. And I don't want to have a spoiler for anybody who hasn't watched it, but there was a crucial scene last night where Christina, this kind of white she-devil character, as we should call her, reenacted very horrific crime to kind of simulate the death of one of, the worst cases of racism that we've seen from the Jim Crow era. And it's amazing how Donald Trump tried to reenact a severe COVID case. And his tweets that he has put out today are just so irresponsible, where he says, I'm the hero. I just looked a few minutes ago. He has a tweet where he says, he's talking about the stock market is up and he's considered an invincible hero. It's like, are you actually kidding me? So it just shows that he was actually doing this as a political ploy to try to get points and distract us from the fact of what last week taught us, was that he's broke. He owed people almost $500 million. He's been lying on his taxes and not paying. And then on top of all of that, how many people have succumbed? We have over 200,000 people who have died. They could not get the access to the medical care. So while he's in there thinking of his political stunt, he's taking away resources from other people. And he's bragging that he's doing well because he had access, because he's the president, to some experimental drugs and other people. So it's like he's just rubbed people's nose in their faces that they couldn't survive COVID, that they didn't have access. And it's just disgusting the way this man is acting in response to this awful political game.
Malaika, your face is saying a lot, so now go ahead and say a lot. What's on your mind, sis?
My face, yeah. I don't know whether or not he has it. I'm just amazed at the degree to which production plays a huge part in how this man lives his life. Because if we look back, yes, he had mounting troubles, and he always finds a diversionary tactic. Always. Anytime he's been in hot water, something bad happens to shift the conversation. But listen, when he went to Walter Reed, he flew up at sunset in a helicopter in Marine One, and he watched, and all the cameras are pointing his way. He took his joyride yesterday. And I just, having Mark Burnett in his pocket and knowing that just really aggravates me that taxpayers are paying good money for this man to pull the wool over our eyes through an elaborate production of the presidency. He ain't real. The only way he got any money was through his fake apprentice persona, and he's just extending that onto the presidency. And it's absolutely disgusting. So please forgive my face. He just continues to.
No, you keep it real. Ayinde, I'm gonna bring you in, and then Joy, I want you to bring up the rear on this first question. Go ahead, Ayinde.
So, we've had this conversation, and I will say initially I didn't think that he had it at all. And I think I still kind of gravitate towards that. I think Malaika just hit on it. It's a production. We can't forget the man as a reality star guy. He got a bailout by creating his reality show of $400 million plus, which kind of, held off all of the people that he owes money to for a moment. And now he's desperate. I do want to say one thing though, and you mentioned this a little bit, Chuck, in your opening. Me personally, I think it's too late for him anyway. And I'm sure we're going to get more into that, because most voters at this point have decided that the man is a lunatic. He's doing far too much. He doesn't have the wherewithal or the common sense to be president of the United States. And those who are going to vote for him are going to vote for him. And those who are not have made up their mind. Early voting has begun. It started last week, I think, in Virginia, if I'm not correct. There were over 1 million and something people that voted already. It started today in South Carolina and California, as well as many other states across the country. So it's you're looking at a 3-act show, which most TV shows are, and he's in a final act and he has nowhere to go. I think it's a circus, and I don't like clowns, and I'll leave it at that.
All right. Joy, what's your thoughts?
So, with my little bit of biological study from high school and college, I'm looking at the timeline. I'm looking at the general turnaround for how long it takes you to exhibit symptoms and to potentially recover from COVID-19. And the timeline doesn't add up. It doesn't mean he didn't have it or doesn't have it. It means he had it before they announced that he had it. So if you think about 6 to 10 days to show symptoms, and so he announces on Thursday and he's in the hospital on Friday, he had that a week ago. I believe that he absolutely had the virus. And so if you think about, the narcissistic nature of this person, and you think about the spin doctors surrounding him, plan one, ignore it. If you don't get sick, if nothing happens, we never say anything. Nobody will ever know. You can continue to say this is all a hoax. And then, plan B, Hope Hicks got it. And everybody knows, let's see what happens. Then he actually starts to develop symptoms. You can't hide it. Oh, guess what? Me and the wife have just now, at this very moment, after the debate, on Thursday or whatever, now we have COVID. And Friday, I'm at the hospital, and Monday, I'm home. Look at how fast I recovered from this special drug treatment. Bro, you didn't have this for a week and a half already. This is the tail end of it, if it's all true. And I think they've been trying to figure out how to turn into the spin, so to speak, or turn into the slide, for all you ICE drivers. I think that they found themselves in a bad position. They tried to keep it quiet, and when they couldn't, they made the most of it. And, I loved Alana's reference to Lovecraft Country. I'm gonna take you back 25 years to Dune. If you remember when Baron Harkonnen thought he was about to die for a hot second, he lost his mind, ironically, because somebody blew a poison on him. And then he's like, am I alive? Yes, Baron, I'm alive. And all of a sudden he thought he was invincible because he lived through a traumatic situation. But bruh, you still got sick. You still treat this as a hoax. And one last thing, and I'll be quiet. That joyride, let me tell you why that bothers me. A lot of people don't understand that the SUV that the president rides in is not a regular SUV. It is hermetically sealed in order to avoid any gas or chemical attacks, which means the air in that van, in that SUV, is circulated. And so he purposefully got into a van knowing that every exhale of his body had live COVID virus in it, and forced these people to drive him around and put their lives at jeopardy just to take some pictures through a window. That to me is one of the most reprehensible things I've heard. I would say in a long time, but I'm gonna say in a month, because he's been president for 4 years. So, it's not the most reprehensible thing he's done, but he throws away other people for his own.
He can.
Absolutely. He can't. He has no empathy at all.
Yeah.
Hey, Hobbs, I have a question right quick.
Go ahead, brother.
So this was brought up to me today, and you can call it foolishness, call it paranoia, whatever. But someone said, to Joy's point, if he does in fact have it, which again, I don't know if I necessarily believe it, but let's say he does, and he knew he had it, and he purposely went to the debate hoping that he might be able to infect Biden with it. Woo. It was just something that was brought up to me, and that's obviously very nefarious and very a sinister plan. But this guy, I wouldn't put anything by him. I want to see maybe what you all think about that, or if that even, how does that sound to you?
Ayinde, I want to jump in first on that. Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
When the debate started last, I guess it was Tuesday night, when they first started filing into the arena, and you noticed the difference. You saw the Biden camp coming in, everybody had on their mask, and then the Trump family and camp came in, no one had on mask. And it wasn't a shock, because this year we have seen that mask wearing has become hyper politicized. I will never understand how or why, but it has. And so with that, to your point, the very fact that at a minimum he had to have known actually makes some sense, because his demeanor was off, or his affect, as some of the medical folks will understand, was off from right out the gate. I mean, we all can say that he walks around with the Mussolini look on his face, trying to project toughness and I'm this big tough guy. I mean, we see that, but he did not look well. Now that I think back on it, I don't think he was well then. And the idea that he knew, and he had to know. I mean, let's be real. He's the president of the United States. So he has medical staff paying attention to him 24/7. There's no way on earth that he didn't have an inkling that something was amiss, and yet to still go forward and come into that arena knowing that just about everybody in his entourage, including the Mrs., were all COVID positive. That's not only negligible, it's actually potentially criminal if you think about it. Just like in most of our states, if you have HIV and you knowingly go forth and have sex with someone without telling them that you're HIV positive, that's a felony offense. And so while we don't have that right now for COVID-19, it comes from the same mindset. Someone else want to jump in on that?
Yeah, so let's talk about the production. I mean, I named all the other folks who say they are COVID-19. I mean, could he go so far as to get advisors and other elected in his party to go along? Because if so, we're talking about a conspiracy here. And I don't know whether he has it or not. Someone mentioned earlier about The Apprentice. That's all he ever knows. Everything is about the show. And as long as you know that, then, you know, in the public eye, you can't take a word out of his mouth seriously. You really can't.
Yeah. Joy, I see you shaking your head.
Yeah, I'm just like, you know, that I had this argument with several people on my page. Like, I posted something saying, you know, it's a shame that in this day and age, instead of praying for the health and recovery of our president, half the country is wondering if he even has it. And the other half is wondering how he's going to spin it. Nobody took a moment to say, oh my God, the president, what's going to happen? They were all like, I don't know if I trust it. Or yes, this is part of the plan and blah, 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 blah. And to your point, Teddy, about, you know, all this large conspiracy, you assume that they were in on it. You think he won't infect his
I don't know what to trust with him, Joyce. It's interesting because the Chris Christies of the world, I mean, you know, they go on shows.
Chris Christie, he don't like none of them. He doesn't care about anyone. He will run over his own children to escape criminal prosecution. If you think the rest of them kids ain't going down before he does, everybody else name on something. He's going to be the last man standing, even if he has to burn everything around him. And so that my point earlier about maybe they just try to keep it quiet. Keeping it quiet means you just got to act like you don't know you infecting everybody whose hand you shake, which is everybody around him. And now they're all sick, but they're not in Walter Reed. They're not getting that same attention. I mean, they're still getting excellent health care because they're all part of his entourage, but still, he don't care about none of them. He don't care about Don Jr. He don't care about nobody but himself.
But Teddy, when you think about this conspiracy, think about this doctor, this well-known, you know, doctor who goes before the camera and lies at the president's behest. It's possible. What I'm saying to you is, I don't know if he did it. What I am telling you that is that it is in the realm of possibility.
Yeah, I agree. Everything is planned.
And that's where I am with it too, Malaika. Same thing. It's within the realm of possibilities. You know, he may or may not have it. I will say that him going to Walter Reed and the quote unquote experimental drugs that he's been getting kind of makes me pause a little bit. But even that, I mean, just the fact, and somebody mentioned earlier, just the fact that this guy would come out and put out tweets about how great of the medicines that they're working on, that he has access to, that nobody else in this country could get. And of course, you know, he's going to feel better if I forgot who made the point, I think Joy maybe earlier, if he had it over a week and a half ago and he knew about it. So I don't know. And it is sad. It is sad that, you know, let me be clear. I don't want anybody to have it. I don't want anybody to have to deal with COVID or the effects of it. I know we all have seen people that have gone through that or know of people that have. So let me be clear with that. But this guy, you know, like I said, it's a circus, and I'm not a fan of clowns. So,
well, I'm not going to lie to you. The other thing that I find is interesting, and I see that Bernadette Garcia made the comment that if the doctor can say he is 244 pounds, he can lie and say he has COVID.
Exactly.
What's interesting about that is I was talking to someone recently. You know, he lies about quite a bit about his health. He claims that he's 6'3", 6'4". Donald Trump ain't no 6'3", 6'4". I have seen pictures of him next to Barack Obama.
Yep.
Barack Obama's about 6'1", maybe 6'1.5" on a good day. He's not 244 pounds. He's closer to probably 280 to 300 pounds. I know that because I tipped the scales over 300 myself. And girth-wise, yeah, he's not far off from where I am, even though I think I look better than he does because I still look athletic, you know. You know, he doesn't look like he ever played a lick of ball a day in his life. But That notwithstanding, again, if the doctors will lie about minor stuff like that to make him look not what on the scale of what they call morbid obesity and what have you, I don't doubt for a second that a doctor can get told to go out and you tell these people that I'm doing fine, because again, he's a narcissist and he runs this country and he runs the people around him as he sees fit. Go ahead. Alana, I think I saw you wanted to say something.
Oh, I mean, I agree with everything that everyone else has said. And, you know, I'm married to someone who faithfully served 29 years in the United States Army. And when I think about him having this ploy to have Secret Service, you know, they also said he was walking around the hospital talking to doctors. You know, people will sign up to take a bullet to protect the leader of this country. They didn't sign up for that. And to see how he is responding to his role as commander-in-chief shows all the more reason why he needs to be relieved of that duty. You know, any soldier, any commanding officer on a battlefield, you have 200,000 bodies laying under your command, you will be relieved of your duty. And if you don't take the strategic tactic and say, okay, you guys, let's spread out. Because if you cluster, the enemy is going to get you. Well, we don't have a fighting enemy with guns, but we have a biological enemy with COVID. And he can't even say, wear your armor, spread out. He's like, come in closer. Oh, give me accolades. You know, he's making it all about himself. And it doesn't matter what level you're on intellectually, economically, but even with the military men and women and those who have served up to protect him and this country, he continues to seek lower and just be derelict in his responsibilities as commander-in-chief.
Did anybody notice that, you know, he has poked fun at this disease from the outset, called it a Democrat hoax, said it would magically go away. He has consistently called it the China virus, the China flu, the China virus. Did you notice, though, that when he made the video on Saturday, the first one from Walter Reed, wasn't no more jokes about the China virus. He was calling it the coronavirus. He was looking really pale. I saw what was fear in his eyes. I don't know if you all have much experience with seeing fear in other people's eyes, but I do. He looked actually a little bit nervous to me, no matter how much he was trying to project toughness and I'm okay, especially when he was leaving the White House and walking on the South Lawn and heading to Marine One on Friday. I could look at those eyes, and that wasn't toughness. That was, am I going to make it? And so with that in mind, I think that what continues to frustrate me is that there are nearly 210,000 people in the ground right now from this disease because A, he didn't take it seriously from the get-go, and then B, he and his ilk still will not take mask wearing and social distancing seriously. Folks, I just want to ask y'all, how do we get to this point where putting on a mask becomes an issue like whether to have less taxes or more taxes, whether to have tariffs against China or not? But how did we politicize, or how did we get to the point where there are well over 60 million of your fellow Americans who think that it's cowardice to put on a mask when they go out in public? Anybody want to take that?
I'll say something. Oh, go ahead.
There are over 100 million people in the world that think the world is flat. So there's no accounting for common sense. There's no accounting for, and not only do they think it's flat, they argue for it. There's a society supporting it. They believe they have scientific evidence to prove that everything that shows you a satellite picture of a round globe, all natural physics, all theory of relativity, all of that is a lie because the world is flat, because the Bible said four corners. Like, there's all kinds of people. And the reason I bring this up is it is not a stretch to have someone become indoctrinated, especially, okay, so give me a moment to ride with me on this. There is, you know, you understand the concept of cognitive dissonance, where if there is something in your heart that you believe, anyone or anything that challenges that belief has to be discarded, no matter how truthful it may be, because it goes against your personal viewpoint, your personal sense of self, your own ego, not narcissism, but your sense of who you are. And there's so many people that are so tied to, unfortunately, the idea of white supremacy as part of who they are. I may not have anything else in the world, but I'm better than you. I may not have what did my mom say, a pot to piss in, a window to throw it out of, but I'm not black. And so when you see a black president shake all that off. That cannot happen because he's the leader of the free world. And so we put anybody in, and now we've identified with this man. He can do no wrong because I can do no wrong. This is my personal sense of self. It is tied indelibly to Donald Trump. And so whatever he says, they're going to do because they are living in a dissonant world. Their entire reality is different. And I'm not saying all Trump supporters, I'm saying that subset that will drink hydrochloroquine, that will contemplate putting bleach in their veins, that will run outside and fight you and protest and take a gun to the courthouse just so they don't have to wear a mask. They're not protecting necessarily his ideals. They're protecting that sense of superiority within themselves.
And I'll tell you something. I'm gonna just jump in, and it might upset some people, but I think that people just stop thinking for themselves, and we don't necessarily have to go to Trump supporters. We see it a lot in our Christian churches that people can't think for themselves. They get locked into one box, and they was raised that way, and their mama was raised that way, and their grandparents were raised that way, and they get so dogmatic into this identity where you can't even stop and say, that doesn't make any sense. Like, you're hurting your own self-interest by supporting this. So I just feel like people stop thinking for themselves, and whoever they want to blindly follow because they feel it's their interest. In this case, I do feel that it goes back to something racist. When I look at racist versus anti-racism and how it makes me feel good if I'm better than you. But some people use that with race, and some people use it with religion. Because I'm a Christian, I'm going to my religious high horse.
So I agree with the thought that people get locked into certain mentalities, and they vote against their own interests. But it also goes back to just the first thing you said, Alana, was they don't think, right? It goes back to just lack of education. We still don't talk about it enough. We're all college graduates. We have fun and Morehouse and Spelman and all that, but we are still of the 1% of people that learn to critically think for themselves. And so when you got somebody that is this ubiquitous, and he can say anything, and they just want to believe. Now, I do agree wholeheartedly with the white supremacy theory. This is about nothing but fear. Okay, fear of change. We had 8 years of this black man. And now, listen, the browning and darkening of America, my way of life, I feel like I'm dealing back in the 60s again. But that's where we are. And so it's actually millions of those people. And for those that sat down in 16 and didn't vote, that's why we are where we are right now.
Go ahead, Malaika.
I was just going to say, when we talk about fear, it's all based in this loss, the potential loss of power. And look at Lindsey Graham's eyes. Look at his face when he talks about the fact that he needs y'all to help fund his campaign. It's because he has been charting this course of supremacy, and he's about to lose, right? And so it's coursing throughout this whole dynamic. The Proud Boys. Trump does policy by heat map. Wherever he finds some heat going his way, he's going to lean into it, right? And so, I think in terms of going back to the question of how did we get here, he goes fishing. And when people start responding to one of his little bullet point messages, because that's all he ever has, he does communications by bullet point. And when somebody hooks on to that, he goes with it, period. And here we are.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm going to tell you what else is interesting with that is all of you made some great points. And when you think about the fact that people are moving like sheep almost, that race is so important to them that they will vote against their own interests. That is something that has beguiled me for as long as I have been watching politics. People, particularly some of our white brothers and sisters out here who, again, like Joy's grandma said, don't have a pot to piss in or a window to throw it out. And yet they think that they align somehow with the platform of the GOP. Let me go tell you where I'm going with that. It is ironic that in the same week that Trump, Tillis, Chris Christie, Hope Hicks, Melania Trump, and so many people have been stricken with coronavirus, that there are still Republicans in Congress right now who are about to do all that they can in the Senate chamber, that is, to push through the confirmation of Amy Coney Barrett. And the reason is not just the abortion piece that we talk about a lot. And again, we can get into that later on in the conversation before we go to. But the main thing is a lot of Americans aren't really sure, or they don't really know that right after the election, the week after November 3rd, the United States Supreme Court is going to hear a case that very well could lead to the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare, being struck down. So what does that mean? That means that even many of these millions of Trump fans who actually either are enrolled in the Affordable Care Act, the Obamacare, or they have been able to be insured by private insurers because they had pre-existing conditions like diabetes and heart disease and cancer, and you name it. If that act is struck down, those people are not going to be protected. And trust you me, big pharmacy and big insurance are two of the major industries that fill the coffers of Republican candidates. And those folks aren't going to do anything to help any of us be able to get protection from pre-existing illnesses. So I continue to find it a trip that folks are jumping up and down and, yes, she's a conservative. She's a conservative. I'm like, yeah, she's going to make it so that you're conservative, but can't even go to the doctor next year because you're not going to have the money to be able to pay it out of pocket if you get sick, even with this coronavirus. Anybody else want to talk about that?
And in addition to that, we do have Roe v. Wade, you know, and I know a lot traditionally in the Black community. I know a lot of people who still think that, you know, they are not pro-choice. They believe that that's wrong. But what's happening is some states are passing laws that criminalize seeking abortions. So now you have one more instance where Black people may be put into the system. Not only that, you have what all of the police reform talk, qualified immunity. So you're stacking the court, not just on Obamacare, but also, or health insurance in general for people. And then the last issue is going to be voter suppression. Well, we've seen how they've been trying to roll that back for years. So, I mean, voter suppression, segregation, racism, like it's all going to be on the table, and they're going to have a majority.
Yeah, and this has immediate implications. I mean, folks, remember, we are 30 days, less than 30 days from Election Day now. And so I'm so glad you brought up voter suppression. You got to watch these states and these governors in Texas. They're taking away locations for you to drop off your absentee ballot. That is nothing but a pure voter suppression tactic. In other states, the same thing is happening. And so it's at a crunch with so many of these races. I'm glad someone brought up Jamie Harrison and Lindsey Graham, because in South Carolina, it's tight on Graham. It really is. So what do? You take away the people's ability to submit their vote. Yep. And that is a calculated strategy. So we really got to wake up. I'm anxious to get to November 4th just for the fight.
Yeah, I am too. And we have to make sure also that we continue to throw all of our support. And I just want to put a public service announcement out on that. I have done my part to help our Morehouse brother, Raphael Warnock, in his race against Kelly Loeffler, a Republican who's also a very strong Trump supporter. We have a chance to not just send Harrison to the Senate from South Carolina, but maybe Raphael Warnock as well from Georgia. And that's huge. So anything that you can do on your public media, social media platforms, folks, make sure that y'all post those links to Raphael and to Jamie. Every little dollar will help down the stretch as we try to turn those two seats blue. Folks, I want to go in a different direction as we come up on the second half of our hour together. And that is something that's troubled me for months. Well, yeah, months now, because we're in October. Kamala Harris was announced as the vice presidential nominee back in August, and the attacks have been relentless, not just from people from the right, but unfortunately, a lot of Hotep, self-styled Hotep brothers across the country who have so much or so many negative things to say about that sister. And there are times that I'm to the point of apoplexy when I see some of these individuals calling her out of her name, referring to her as a bed wench, a whore, and worse, things that I won't say even at prime time. With that in mind, I'd like to talk about her as a vice president. What is it that you all are seeing How are you feeling about even the debate that's supposed to come up this week with her and Mike Pence, depending on what happens due to, we don't know if Mike Pence has COVID-19 as well. Anybody want to jump in first in defense of our system? Matter of fact, let me do it this way. Alana, since she's an AKA, as our, everybody else on the panel wears that crimson and cream except for Teddy. We're not going to talk about the alphas. But Alana, go ahead and jump on in initially and talk about your soror's candidacy and the sexism that we are starting to see thrown her way.
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of sexism and racism, but what I will say is that she was made for this moment. She's born for it. I don't want to give any attention or oxygen to the ignorance that is still pervasive in our own community and America at large. What I will say is that she didn't get to the point that she is at now without people calling her names, questioning her past relationships, questioning her morality, everything that we know Black women are subjected to by being over-sexualized and objectified and not seen as anyone who is intelligent or competent or qualified to handle the position. She did it as attorney. She did it as district attorney. Then she did it as attorney general for the state of California, where she led, the mortgage reparations for all of the people who lost their homes and unlawful evictions. And so she's prepared. We've seen her and her qualifications on the Judiciary Committee. So I just want to remind everybody of the resilience and strength that Black women have, and she has it. And so we have a large contingent, not just in, my sorority, but really all of the Divine Nine and Black women everywhere that's holding her up. In addition to all her foremothers whose shoulder she stands on. And she went to Howard, okay? She's got it deep down. She is ready for this moment. And I cannot wait for Wednesday. When you think about the Democratic National Convention, we still face this angry Black woman. So even when you're passionate, that can come across as angry. So she's showed a softer side. So we've seen that, done that, been there, check that box. She's bringing the heat. She's going to bring the heat on Wednesday. So yes, I do acknowledge that it is happening, but I prefer to focus on her strength and resilience, and she's ready to meet this moment.
I want to jump in on a comment that I saw Mr. Thomas make in the chat room. He said, it's amazing how often Hotep ideology or talking points align with right-wing politics. Thank you. And I want to jump on that for a second, because what's really happening there is selective oppression. You can go to the Bible and make the Bible say whatever you want to say. If you've ever watched The Handmaid's Tale, you know that you can pull a sentence out of the Bible and make an entirely unjust civilization out of it by saying this is what it said. So the idea of submission, the idea of being non-virtuous, all of that is displacing race for gender. And it's the same sort of oppression. Damon Young with The Root said a few years back, Black men are the white people of Black society. And he caught hell for it because, of course, not all men, we can do that all day. But again, even the defenses sound the same as some of our are not racist, not all white people, colleagues, associates, people we don't know, etc. But yeah, it's just another form of oppression. And so the tools of oppression are consistent. Demean you, devalue you, question you, and if all else fails, control you, criminalize you, and kill you. The same over and over again. And so you're seeing that same thing from a gender standpoint instead of color.
Amen.
Chuck, I just want to jump in really quickly. I think that she has done a tremendous job holding, keeping herself, giving off the image that she should be giving off right now. I think that she would make an incredible vice president. I think anyone that says otherwise is an absolute, it's a personal thing and it has nothing to do with her actual qualifications. And the reality is on Wednesday, Pence doesn't want that action. You talk about somebody coming up with a conspiracy and catching Rona. I wouldn't be surprised if he tries to find a way to slip out of this. You know what I'm saying? He don't want that. He doesn't want that. I don't know anybody that would be willing to get on stage with the former attorney general for the state of California and argue points with her. She is by far more intelligent and obviously more qualified. I'd love to see it, but I think old boy's going to find a way to get out of it.
Yeah.
Or he better. He better go breathe on Donald Trump. Let Donald Trump breathe on him. I'm sorry, I shouldn't say that.
No, I know. And Ayinde, you raise a great point because
Hold on, Chuck. One quick thing.
Okay, I'm sorry, brother. Go ahead.
And one last thing, there is a little bit of purple and gold on this panel too.
Yeah. No, don't forget that. Don't forget that.
You know, I just want to let you know.
I know. Shout out to you.
You didn't know that.
Oh, huh?
Since you didn't know that, I just wanted to bring that up.
Yeah. Mo and some of his LBs are some of my best friends in life. So yeah, shout out to the RO. But definitely one of the things when I saw her a couple of years ago when she reduced Brett Kavanaugh to tears, and I was just like, wow, I can tell that when she was in a courtroom, she was a very fierce cross-examiner, and she did it with calm. I mean, she just dissected Brett. And I actually, at a certain point, started to feel sorry for him. It's like, stop the fight, throw in the towel because he was not ready for that smoke. And just to be honest, not trying to be petty, but Mike Pence just is boring as the day is long. I have tried to listen to him over the course of the last 3 or 4 years, and he's not going to be ready with the rapid fire response nature either. He's going to take too long to get out the gate, and I think that she's going to have him for like the homecoming opponent. Malaika, you want to say something on this piece before we move on?
No, I just wanted to say, first of all, shout out to D9 Love, right? We Black women are behind Kamala, but she's made for this moment. And I think what we've seen from her in the past, her brand to me is amazing. I watch things from that lens, but she is very precise. She's obviously very brilliant as well. But she has this demeanor that she can cut you while she is smiling at you. And watch for that on Wednesday night, because Mike Pence they're gonna try to coach him into getting her into that angry Black woman corner, and she's gonna smile her way right on out of it. And that is part of her magic, and that's part of what makes her communication style great. So just watch for that and how Pence is not going to be able to navigate around it.
She's going to be on the offense. So don't just wait for her to sit back and respond to anything. She's going to cut. Oh, wait, well, tell me the details of that. That's what I'm looking for.
I just want her to ask him, why was the president reluctant to hand power over to you while he was in the hospital?
That's a great question, Malaika. That's a great question. Joy, you want to jump in?
Yeah, I just want to jump in on the concept of arguing with a smart Black woman.
Don't do it.
Some of you have been there before. Some of you will be there again. But think of all the memes and things we've had. I remember when they were looking for Osama bin Laden, and like, send a Black woman because she will find him where he is. You think about. I know you've all seen this face. So where were you? That question. She is not going to put herself in a position where she doesn't know not only the answer, but all permutations of the answer you're about to give, so she can shake you right in the heart. This man is not ready for what's about to happen to him, and I am here for it.
All the way for it.
All of it. This is probably going to make my week. I'm so excited.
Yes.
Get your popcorn ready. Get your popcorn ready.
No doubt about it. And I actually want to segue back into something else now. And as much as we all will be here and we can talk about this debate the next time we get together, let me ask you this. After what we saw last Tuesday night with the Trump-Biden debate, does it help America at all at this point to have a second and third Trump-Biden debate? Anybody want to weigh in on that?
I don't think it helps, but I think it will happen. Neither one of them. So this is a pissing contest. Neither one of them is going to back out because the other will be able to say they don't want to face me. This is, remember your schoolyard. This is standing shoulder to shoulder talking about make your move. Nobody wants to be there, but everybody's going to wait this out. Like they have to. They've backed themselves into this corner with their posturing. Both of them, with their posturing, their bravado. One more than the other, but. Neither one can say maybe we shouldn't do this because the other one will pounce on it and say, see, I told you he's not ready to lead. So we're going to have to slog through a couple more debates. But I hope that the American people are able to hear some cogent points during the vice presidential debate. I think that Kamala will absolutely be able to state the Democratic platform well. I think that Pence will probably comport himself admirably as well. he ain't ready to cross, to do any secondary, rebuttals. But I think that he will at least be able to put out a few hot button things, a few catchphrases, et cetera, to struggle through this debate. But I'm putting all of my hope for the undecided attention grab on Kamala, on that debate. The other two are going to be mess and more mess.
And I think it depends on who the moderator is. I wish we could get Samuel Jackson. Just in case we can't. Somebody who's going to regulate, the orange factor, because without that, you can't get points in. And, someone else, I think I read this online, talked about how Vice President Biden had a stuttering issue early on, a speech impediment. And so I know a lot of people have mentioned that he seemed a little confused or a little slow, but I think also he was still trying to make sure that he kept his thoughts aligned. So I think if we have a good moderator that just shuts the mic off or has somebody come in and tackle Trump, that would be nice too. I wouldn't mind seeing that. We can get to the points, because there are those independent voters that are out there, or undecided voters. And I think that they just want to make sure, like, okay, they need that little bit of convincing. So as long as we have that, I think it's helpful. But if it's going to be another runaway Trump train, no, it won't benefit anybody.
Alana, I don't want you to think that I was laughing at you and your response. I was laughing at Patricia Henson's comment that the next moderator needs to be Medea. I got to watch what happens in the chat, because some of our viewers are hilarious. And with that in mind, you all, as we come close to an end, one of the questions I want to end with each of you: what do you see happening down the end of the stretch? Like, as we're 29 days away from the election, I have a hard time believing that in this particular year that there are people who still have yet to make their minds up. With that in mind, this time 4 years ago, if you had asked me to bet $1,000 on the outcome, I was so confident that Hillary Clinton was going to win, and win going away. And yet it did not happen. And so with that, I think that makes me somewhat cautiously optimistic that some of the problems that we saw 4 years ago, because there were some voters who, as much as we might try to say otherwise, there were some Democrats who just did not like Hillary Clinton. And maybe Joe Biden won't have some of those same feelings emanating from people, whether it's based in sexism or just plain, oh, I don't like Hillary. With that in mind, I want each of you to express, what do you foresee happening on the night of November 3rd? And we can start with Joy, and we'll go clockwise from my view. So that would be Teddy, then Malaika, then Alana, and then Ayinde. You'll bring up the rear.
So I'm going to tell you, to paraphrase the Batman phrase, Joe Biden is not the president we want, but he is absolutely the mediocre white man we need right now. There are so many people who, again, we're talking about that duality of racism and sexism. And so they're still retaliating for having a black man as president for 8 years. They're still not liking that. But now you've got a white man that can give them some of the things they liked about the previous administration, but in a white male package that suits their sense of identity, their sense of self. I think he'll pick up a lot of votes that way. If Trump continues to self-destruct, that'll be what it is. There are a lot of people that are looking for somewhere else to go because he is so distasteful. The question is, will that outweigh? So you're balancing morality and looking for something presidential versus sexism and racism, and how that drives people's decisions. And I think we might be able to edge it out. That's my hope. I knew when Hillary became the nominee that she wasn't going to win, because I know men, not you guys, but I knew they weren't going to let this country go from a black man to a white woman and not see a white man in charge for an entire generation. That wasn't going to happen. I was surprised. I think Trump was probably her best chance of winning. I was surprised that she still couldn't beat him. But all the stuff that drummed up, that October surprise of reopening the thing with her emails, et cetera. I'm interested to see if Joe can hang on. If he can just not stick his foot all the way in his mouth between now and November 3rd, I think he can take this win, because Trump eats his shoes on a daily basis. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah. And Teddy, before I give the mic to you, Joy, great point, because I kept waiting last week with bated breath afraid that Joe, and we know Joe from Scranton, Pennsylvania, he can get kind of ornery there. I just thought that there was going to be some F-bombs or something when he kept getting interrupted, and I was like, "Don't do it, Joe." Kind of like, "Don't do it, Miss Sophia from The Color Purple." So with that said, go ahead, brother.
Yeah, I think I'm optimistic that Biden will come out, but there's a metric to pay attention to. Yeah, I actually think that Black folk are so mad, and I mean Black men and women, at all of the racism out of this White House, all of the comments about S-hole countries. I don't think that's going to be forgotten this time. And the metric is to get Black voter turnout to a percentage point or half a point past 2012. Past 2012. Now, I mean, we talked a little earlier about the suppression. I think the only thing that stops this is to just, like the Miami Heat had to do to the Lakers last night, muck it up, right? There's got to be a way for it to be delegitimized or have something like Trump talks about stuff being thrown in the river. But besides that, if Black people, I think this election is dependent on us and getting the turnout that we had in 2012 when we were for a Black person, then I think Biden squeezes it out.
Amen. Malaika, what are your thoughts on what we will see heading down the home stretch?
Well, we are not going to be finished on election night. And I think we need to arm our community with that knowledge and understanding. I'm so hopeful, obviously, that Joe can pull it out. Unfortunately, the polling is showing that there has been some Black voter migration over to Trump's camp, right? So some of us are mad and some of us just want to be tokenized, right? So I'm hopeful. I'm very hopeful. It's a turnout effort. It's a Black voter turnout effort. It is a young people voter turnout effort. That's who stayed at home on the couch in 2016. So we really have to focus our efforts and our platforms on people understanding the issues and what it means to them. We got to tell people like Charlemagne to be additive to the conversation and stop flattening the space and making either of them look undesirable. Sean, all these people who are taking away from the positive conversation, we need positive momentum. Now, Donald Trump is he's going to self-destruct, but he could still win. He can self-destruct and still win because that's what his people like to see. That's machismo for them. So, you know, I'm going to be nervous. I'm going to be really nervous and rocking like this for the next 30 days. I think we can pull it out, but has to be all hands on deck. Literally, nobody can sit down and sleep this one out.
Amen. Alana.
I agree with that. So I just want to pick up and say, yeah, we can't just sit this one out, but it's really not enough for us to get out and vote. And even to make sure that everybody in our circle, our family and our friends vote. We know Donald Trump is going to play dirty, and we really need African Americans to be poll workers. We need African Americans to be poll observers. We need to be there when they do the tallying. We need to verify because we know he doesn't play fair. We don't want to be on November 4th or December 4th looking back and saying, oh my God, I can't believe that. Voter intimidation is already happening now. People are parking outside of early voting centers in their trucks with their flags and their Trump support posters, and that's a form of voter intimidation. And so if you live in a battleground state, I would just challenge and encourage you to think about becoming a poll observer. If you are an attorney, you can do that. I know that my sorority, we have organized attorneys to volunteer to be poll observers, to make sure there's not voter intimidation that's going on, to make sure that people's questions are being answered. A lot of people just don't know what to do. And if they are voting for the first time, they want to make sure that they have the right information. Every state is different. Some people, you might not need voter identification, but I've also heard stories just in some of the trainings where people walking through the line saying, oh, do you have your identification? You need to have a valid driver's license. So they're all kind of dirty tax that are going on, and they're going to be targeting our community. So I think in addition of going to the polls, we need to be actually working at the polls.
Amen. Ayinde, take us out, brother.
Yeah, for sure. I'm the same as everyone. I'm cautiously optimistic. I'm very optimistic, though. I think that one of the things you know, when you're running for political office, and we all kind of know this, you're either running one of two ways. You're either running scared or you're running to be scared, you know. And I think that we as a people and we as voters and supporters of our Democratic nominees here, we're scared, and we should be scared. I think that's important. I think that it will galvanize people. I think that people are kind of, you know, we're at the point now where everyone's fed up with this BS and with this country, you know, the things that have happened in this country over the past 40 years. We want to see a major change happen, and I think it's going to happen. Now, I think Donald Trump and his, you know, cohorts and his minions or whatever are going to be desperate. And desperate people will do all kinds of things, as everyone has pointed out. So I think that's something to keep in mind. You know, the narrative is already being shaped that, well, if he loses, it's because of this or because of that. And all of that is BS. You know, I think we just stay focused, make sure that our people get out and vote, which, you know, I'm sure we all are doing. And one last thing I want to say, in South Carolina today, they started early voting. And somebody hit me up and said there were 60 to 70 of our people in line waiting to vote. And that's pretty big on the first day of early voting. That's a big thing. So I'm excited, really. I'm excited to see what, you know, November 4th looks like. I plan on celebrating, but again, I'm cautiously optimistic. I don't like the circus.
No doubt. And with that, I want to thank each of you for coming on and being a panelist. I'm going to miss you all in a few weeks since we are not going to have homecoming. But again, I pray that your families and each of you will be safe over the course of the next year. And if everything goes well, we will be able to fellowship again come next October in Atlanta. But with that, again, I want to thank everyone who tuned in this evening as well. This election is important. It has almost become cliche for people to say this is the most important election in our lifetimes. But I actually think this time is the absolute truth. And with that in mind, today was the last day to register to vote in Florida. I'm going to put up on my Facebook page a chart that another Spelman classmate of ours, Ayanna Hawkins, came up with that will show when the last day to register is in other states. Make sure that you register. Make sure that you have your identification squared away. One of the biggest things that has impeded people from being able to vote in years past is they get there on election day. They might not have their driver's license. I'm like with the Sam Club thing. Hey, go with 2 forms of ID just to make sure everything is squared away. And make sure that you take somebody else with you, your mama, your sister, your cousin, them too, channeling outcasts. Make sure that people go and vote. This is crucial. Make sure that you've got all the information that you need and do not be intimidated by anyone. And if you sense any intimidation, you make sure that you contact your local supervisor of election, you contact law enforcement, and again, they will get the problem solved. With that, again, I want to thank you for watching Hobbservation Point Live. I look forward to the next time. Take care. Have a great week.